Well, we can now talk to Riyad Mansour, Palestinian ambassador to the UN. He joins us live from UN headquarters in New York. Thank you for talking to us. How dangerous would you say this moment is?
It's extremely dangerous because the extremists on the Israeli side have been supported by the Israeli occupying authority and their security forces, including some ministers, in trying to change, the situation and the status quo on the compound of the Al-Aqsa mosque. This is very sensitive issue, and it is very explosive. That is infuriating the Palestinian people, the Arab nation, and also the Islamic Ummah. And if this situation is not contained, it could lead to a religious confrontation between Muslim and Jews over holy sites. That's precisely why we have been campaigning in the Security Council for the last few days with the Jordanian representative, the ambassador that represents the Arab group, and with the president of the Security Council, the ambassador of Russia, and also with other members of the Security Council, including the Americans, that the Security Council should shoulder its responsibility and call for an immediate cessation of this aggression against our holy sites on East Jerusalem.
But
and we are
Ambassador,
demanding a condemnation of this action.
Can I ask you then why it is you are not accepting the reassurances offered by Prime Minister Netanyahu that the status quo will be maintained, something that he has mentioned on several occasions?
What he says is something, and the action of his forces and the extremists is something else. It speaks louder than his false assurances. If he is true to what he is saying, he should withdraw all of his forces from Al-Aqsa Mosque. He should not allow extremist Jews to come and try to have a presence, permanent presence, to establish a synagogue and to have prayer inside Al-Aqsa Mosque. That is contrary to agreements that has been put in place and will be changing the status quo. If he is genuine about what he is saying, let his action speak and withdraw all of his forces from Al-Aqsa compound and from the holy city outside the walls, and take away with him and with his forces the extremists who are creating this provocation.
And you say that together with the Jordanian representative at the UN, you've launched a campaign now to try to get Security Council action on this matter. What kind of reception are you getting?
Well, there is some positive reaction. We know that the Israeli side is telling the Americans that they don't want any action from the Security Council. We'll see, what will happen. The Security Council is meeting behind closed doors in consultation about this issue and other issues related, to the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory. We hope that the Security Council will elevate itself to have the political will to act and to adopt a product that would pressure Israel to stop this aggression against our holy sites in Jerusalem.
Ambassador Mansour talking to us live from the UN in New York. Thank you very much. Now we can talk to Robbie Sable, who's Professor of International Law at Hebrew University and a former legal advisor to the Israeli Foreign Ministry. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us as well. As you heard, Ambassador Mansour described the situation as explosive, with great potential for it to get even worse. Why isn't the Israeli government doing more to rein in those who would seek to challenge the status quo?
I think it's worthwhile putting some background here. Israel has no dispute with Islam. There's an Israeli-Palestinian dispute. It is not a dispute with Islam. No Israeli government has ever made it, and the tremendous efforts have been made to make sure it is not a dispute, and Islam should have no dispute with Israel. Certain elements are trying to turn this into a religious dispute. I think it's a tragedy for all people. Israel, of course, has 20% of the population are Muslim, and we're going to make every effort to make sure this doesn't become a religious dispute.
But clearly the government of Prime Minister Netanyahu is not managing the situation. He's not even managing his own cabinet. An agriculture minister, a member of his own government, was said to have been part of the group making a foray into this holiest of sites.
the Israeli government policy is decided by the Israeli government. And by the way, they've done something pretty unusual here. No Jew is allowed to pray publicly in the Sharm el-Sheikh area in the plaza outside. Nobody's ever attempted to go into Al-Aqsa, and I'm sorry that Ambassador Mansour talked about it. Nobody's ever attempted. The mosque is controlled by the Waqf, and it has been controlled for the last 50 years by the Waqf. The question is, can they pray outside? And even here, the Israeli government has determined that although theoretically people can pray anywhere in public spaces, they don't allow Jews to pray publicly because it might offend Islam. I think this is one of the few places in the world where Jews are not allowed by the Israeli government to publicly pray in the area outside the mosque because it might offend, and there will be no change in the Israeli government policy. I spoke to government people and they assure me this will continue, this policy, even though, by the way, it does offend certain elements, the religious elements in Israel who feel they have a right.
The problem seems to be, though, Mr. Sable, that the government of Mr. Netanyahu is saying one thing and then turning a blind eye to what exactly is going on the ground. So almost playing a double game, allowing the religious nationalists to challenge the status quo almost on a daily basis while paying lip service to maintaining the status quo.
No, the policy has been continued. And it's the policy of the police to prevent anybody praying, any Jew praying publicly in the area outside the mosque. And this will continue. I agree with you. There are certain religious Jews who feel they have a right to do it. The Israeli government policy, which, by the way, has been approved by the court, because certain people took it to the court and said, why do you prevent people praying publicly in a public area? And the government's answer was, it might offend the Muslim population. We're not going to do it, and we're not going to continue not to do it. I think it's a tragedy that people are trying to turn what could be a center of religious cohabitation into a source of discontent and of violence, and it is a real tragedy.
Ronnie Sable, thank you very much. Ronnie Sable talking to us live from Israel. Thank you.